Welcome to another EHC podcast. This is the host, Jim Pete, just letting you know that this podcast is a little different from the rest. WFNY's Jake Burns and I talk The Last Jedi, and it is definitively not spoiler-free. We have an hour-long conversation where we talk about as many different angles in that movie as we possibly can, and like I said, it isn't spoiler-free. So if you haven't seen the movie and you've made it this far, you probably should stop now, because if you go any further and blame us, well, Jimmy cracked corn, and I certainly don't care. So, here is a conversation on Star Wars: The Last Jedi. Probably not the last one Jake and I have, but certainly the first. So if you're curious about the movie and what we thought, again, spoilers are about to commence. Here's the podcast.
For next year.
Waiting for next year.
Welcome to a special edition of Everyone Hates Cleveland, the podcast. Normally we talk, Cleveland sports, but today, a newcomer to EHC, the podcast, not a newcomer to WFNY, the podcast. Actually, this is your first podcast, not counting all those little things Dom puts together. Jake Burns, what's up, man?
Not much, man. Happy to join you. Pumped up.
So, first of all, if you hear the name Jake Burns and you see it on the website and you're thinking Cleveland Browns, we are not talking about the Cleveland Browns, which probably everybody who's listening to Jake is probably like, thank God. We are going to actually podcast on the Browns, whether it's today or in the next week or so. But today we are going to do the very first EHC movie podcast. That's right. We're going to talk about Star Wars: The Last Jedi. So those of you that have gotten here by accident and are sick of hearing about Star Wars: The Last Jedi on Twitter and everywhere else, well, you should leave now, because the next 45 minutes or so are going to be all about the latest Star Wars movie, Episode 8. Jake, let's just jump right into it. You and I both went and saw it opening night, and it's been 4 days since you've seen the movie. Obviously, you've probably I know you were on you were on alert on Twitter. You didn't see anything prior, but I know you've probably been getting barraged by Last Jedi stuff over the last 4 or 5 days. What are your initial thoughts now that you have had some time to ponder the movie? After you, because I know when you came blazing out of that movie, just like me, we were all gung ho, everything was great. Where are you standing now? It's been 4 days.
Yeah, it's been so much to take in, especially being removed from it, like you said, for 4 days. I keep thinking. I'm a guy like a lot of our listeners, readers. I'm a deep thinker, so I probably cared way too much. There were some things that bothered me, but overall, I thought it was just like about as outstanding as they could do if they were going to break the mold for what they've typically done, where we expect a certain formulaic thing from them. The same we got with Force Awakens, where people complained about it being predictable. We got away from that, and it's tough to find that middle ground for the traditionalists and the people that want something new. I thought it was outstanding. I thought that they did so many different things that we weren't expecting, while also incorporating some things that we were expecting. So overall, the first word that came to mind when you had messaged me back then was just groundbreaking stuff, I thought.
Yeah, well, I like it. Almost seemed like with J.J. Abrams doing The Force Awakens, and he clearly was all about the homage to the first to A New Hope, basically formatted just like A New Hope, just kind of heading in a different direction, so that all of those old fans who have been waiting for kind of the with the prequels, I think a lot of people turned away from the prequels, whereas it was clear Abrams was looking to kind of grab hold of those fans again, and I thought he did a great job with that. Rian Johnson seemed to see the kind of the backlash, the month later backlash that Abrams kind of took for that from a lot of, I don't know. I mean, we could talk about, I seems like when we talk Cleveland sports, we talk about Twitter fans too. And I feel like we're going to end up there at some point, but it almost was like Rian Johnson spent a lot of time on social media, saw what everybody was expecting, and just decided to go a different direction. And I really like that. There was enough homage in there, because there were several moments that we'll get to here in a few minutes that made me think of Empire Strikes Back, which clearly is a second film of a trilogy. They were maybe he was kind of aiming towards, but there was some Return of the Jedi stuff in there that I kind of thought was kind of cool. But there was stuff that he clearly put in there to go in a different direction. And I didn't really know where to start with this because I don't want people, I mean, we're both clearly fans and I don't want people to think we're just hobnobbing with Star Wars here. But I want to start with probably, in my opinion, just over the past few days, the biggest kind of controversial piece to the movie. And that's that casino scene at I think Cantu Bite was the name of the place. This seems to be the most controversial piece. And I just want to share this. I want to get your thoughts.
Yeah.
I went and saw it with my 13-year-old, my 15-year-old. And of course, when I went, I'm old enough to remember going to see the original movies in the theater, but that's for another day. I liked going with my kids, especially because I do believe at the end of the day that all of these Star Wars movies are built for the younger kids. And watching the movie through my daughter's eyes specifically, because she seems to have kind of the same mentality as me, has been a lot of fun. So we walked out of the movie theater, and the first thing that she said to me was how much she loved that casino scene and all of the stuff that kind of went along with it. Of course, there's a lot of weird things in there that, the animal rights stuff and the clear political stuff with the money stuff. I don't want to get into that right now. But what was your opinion on that kind of piece where we saw Finn and this new character Rose kind of going off in the middle of all of this other stuff to this casino world? Did you like that, or was it one of those things that you thought maybe could have, I don't know, either been in another movie, or did it need to be in this one?
That's a good question. I've thought about that a lot, because there's the idea that the movie was a little bit too long, the 2 hours and some 30 minutes and some change. That's maybe a scene that you could cut out of it and still get where they were trying to get. I liked it. I thought it brought, just my feeling is the Benicio del Toro feel for his character brings a little bit of that Han Solo feel to it.
Yes.
And I like that. I like that feel. I want to see more of him in the next movie. I thought it was pretty necessary. I don't necessarily love some of it, but I like the feel of it, and I thought it was necessary for the storyline to make some sense, if that makes sense overall. I'm big into what they did with the animals and the animal rights stuff. I think that was necessary. The people living off of choosing side, not choosing sides and playing both sides for money. I thought that's perfect, because the galaxy's bigger than these little parts of things that we get, and understanding that there's money-driven people in the society just in different parts of the galaxy. That's the part about the movie that I probably liked the most, that it felt bigger than these little storylines. It felt bigger than that. It felt like the entire galaxy was at stake. And that's the difference I felt in this one than the other ones.
Yeah, well, and clearly Rian Johnson was going for that because, obviously Rian Johnson's got a trilogy of his own coming where he's going to kind of spearhead that. It sort of felt like some of this stuff that he put in here, including this world right here, might connect to that at some point. He used a couple of interesting actors. Justin Theroux was in there, kind of thrown in there as the guy they were looking for, and he ended up not being a part of it. And to me, the Del Toro character, DJ, he's going to come back. I mean, I will tell you this. If Abrams doesn't use him in the next movie, or if he's not in that next trilogy, that was a really tasty character, I thought. And while right now it sort of feels like a letdown to me because I was waiting for something else throughout this movie, I think the big thing through this whole review that we're doing, it's not really a review, more of a conversation, is to remember that 9 is still coming, plus this other trilogy. And I think everything in this movie sets up for that final trilogy of the Skywalker saga, if you want to go that route. I guess my thing here is, do you think that this was just thrown in at the end of the day because they didn't have enough for Finn? Or is it possible that it was thrown in there to give Rose a little bit of a meatier piece of this movie so that she could be kind of that full character at the end? We'll get to the end in a bit, but or was this Rian Johnson's kind of thinking all along? He seems to be too smart a guy just to go, hey, let's just throw this random thing in.
Yeah, I think they wanted more for Finn with where they were setting most of it. Most of the movie seemed to be set in a really tight time span. So they didn't necessarily have much for Finn to do. I think that probably played into it. I think they tried to bring in Rose so that they could feel like there was a reason somebody was in the rebellion and they were giving a true reason. Like that first scene where that Poe Dameron scene where they get the drop the button, that felt like Rogue One to me. I talked
Yeah.
with a couple of my friends at work.
Yeah.
Like that truly felt like a palpable tension Rogue One type feel, which is one of my favorite ones. We'll talk about that another time. But it just felt like there was so much on the line. And when that remote detonator is sitting up there and she's trying to knock it down, and then they tie that into being her sister, I just thought that was really cool. I mean, could the Rose character have been out of the movie and it felt the same? Maybe, perhaps, but you need more characters. You need to feel a connection for this is why this person joined the rebellion. If I were in this landscape, what would I do? Would I pursue the money? Would I go after it from another side? It's an interesting personal qualm that I think people have to deal with, and I thought that they did a pretty good job of tying that in. I think that maybe, this is just my personal opinion, could be disagreed with a lot. I thought they could have had a better actress for that role, but I do like the idea of what they did with her.
I was talking to another friend of mine, and he was saying something to me about her. It's funny that you mentioned that. I didn't really think about that, but he said the one thing that bothered him about the whole movie is every time Rose would talk, he kept thinking about a tour guide at Disney. And I thought, I mean, so I went and saw it a second time, and now I can't get that out of my head, and now you've just added the cement onto that. So great, thanks.
Yeah, my bad.
All right, so and I do want to just throw a couple things in there since we're talking about it. I do like the fact that they had take a lot of hit, and there's some truth to all that, but there was some homage in that scene, in that piece of the movie, to Phantom Menace with with the pod racing, of course, with the horse races there, obviously tie in there, which I really liked a lot because, like I said, I do think there's validity to all 9 movies. We'll talk probably in another podcast down the line about, this is the first time Jake and I have talked, for those of you listening. So I don't know. I mean, perhaps Phantom Menace was his favorite movie of all time. I'm jesting. I don't know that to be true. Although we do, at some point we'll have our Star Wars rankings. I don't think it'll be in this one, but somewhere soon. All right. You mentioned the first scene, and I guess this is as good a place as any to talk about Poe Dameron's piece in this movie. Oscar Isaac, fantastic actor. And we're kind of going to parallel it too with the humor. I think different sort of humor in this Star Wars movie than I think we've seen in the past. I think George Lucas, I think he got lucky in a sense to have a guy like Harrison Ford kind of dishing out some of his humor in the first trilogy, and really he only directed the first one. The prequels had some really hokey humor, really tied in with characters, the Jar Jar Binks character, and I think there were some other actors. Hayden Christensen probably wasn't quite the actor for any of the movies, but that's my own opinion. But a lot of the humor kind of swashed by. This movie, clearly Rian Johnson was going for a specific kind of humor. And it comes right out of the gate with that scene that you mentioned with Poe Dameron taking his X-Wing and flying it right in front of the entire I almost said the Empire. But he's sitting in front, and we had the moment of the movie like 2 seconds in after the camera dropped from the scroll, where we have the "Can you hear me now" moment that had the theater, at least both theaters that I was in, had them laughing hysterically. And I remember thinking at the time, like, as Poe Dameron's talking to General Hux, and Hux goes into this big spiel about he's going to destroy the rebellion, and Poe's like, "Are you on? Are you there?" And that whole scene was pretty hilarious. The Poe Dameron character had an amazing arc in this to me. B, he obviously is playing that Han Solo part as well. I think they handled that very well. But what do you think of the Poe Dameron arc starting there? And really, I thought it was interesting because I think the Han Solo arc through much of the movies was listen to me, blow up first, and it works. To this kind of more realistic, you kept expecting Poe Dameron to take over. And ultimately, we find out that his blow-up first mentality wasn't the way to go. I thought that was really kind of neat. Again, kind of going back to what you were talking about with the cantina, with the casino scene. I think this was another piece that Rian Johnson put in there to just give it more of a real feel. All right, talk about Poe Dameron. What do you think about him, and what do you think about the humor as well? There seemed to be a lot of place jokes. I kind of think it was I just like the humor. I like most of it. And we can talk about a few of the Luke Skywalker drinking the milk thing kind of pops into head as well. Just tell me what you think about the Poe Dameron stuff, and what do you think about the humor of the movie?
Yeah, no. So I thought it was ironic that the Force Awakens started with a little bit of Poe Dameron humor, where he's down on his knees in front of Kylo Ren, and he's saying, remember he's saying like, well, do you talk first? Do I talk first? Do you take the mask off? It was pretty funny. So they kind of did the same thing in 2 straight movies, which I like, because my thought process is they have figured out that Oscar Isaac, like you said, is a fantastic actor, and they had to include him in more because that dude has a way of stealing pretty much every scene that he's in, and it's organic. It's not even necessarily character driven. Like if you've seen Ex Machina, some of the things that he's been in, where that dude just steals scenes, and he's powerful in an aura that's pretty natural. So I loved what they did with him. I liked that they, like you said, they arced it for him. So the very beginning, they get his humor, which is fantastic. I mean, it lightened the mood. Everybody's so serious and tense. Let's go. What's this going to be like? And he's making some pretty good jokes to hold off the First Order. So I thought that was perfect. I thought that they taught him some lessons that were pretty cool throughout too. So he, obviously, like you said, that he wanted to blow everything up right from the beginning. And this is how we're going to do it. We're going to use blasters, and we're going to go after him. And then he kind of starts to slowly figure out, as a leadership arc, like you said a little bit, that this isn't the best way to go about it. Maybe I don't know everything I need to know. And then by the end, when they're on the ice planet there, I can't remember the name of that planet, he comes to understand that just surviving is the necessary part of the rebellion. It's not always winning every battle. It's winning, it's trying to win the war as a whole. So I love the arc. The humor, there were some awkward spots. I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to make, everybody laugh here and there. Some misplaced humor. I have to see it again. I just remember sitting in the chair thinking that was probably a little bit ill-timed, but there were some that was really funny that I genuinely cackled in my chair from laughing. So it's a mixture there. I mean, it's whatever. It's subjective to whatever people like. I thought that there were a couple. Like I said, I have to see it again to know exactly what spots I'm talking about. But no, the humor part wasn't too much. It felt as good as most. What I like about some of those Marvel movies is that they don't take themselves too serious. They're pretty self-aware. It felt like that was Star Wars again, that they were self-aware about what's important. The milk scene was hands down the weirdest Star Wars scene I think I've ever seen, and that includes Ewok scenes and some of those weird. That was weird. I don't know why they didn't cut that out. Did they sit at a table and what do you think? Did they sit at a table and go, "What the heck are we doing here?"
I really, so you hear these rumors about Mark Hamill having issues with the movie, and I think look at where he was as a character compared to what the Luke that we knew from the end of Return of the Jedi. And this is not the same Luke Skywalker. I think that Rian Johnson's whole thing here, not to get too geeked out about this, is we'll talk about Yoda, who makes, again, if you're this far in and you're worried about spoilers, so be it. But, Yoda, of course, makes an appearance. And I think if you look at Obi-Wan Kenobi in New Hope, you look at Yoda on Tatooine and Empire, and you look at Luke Skywalker in this movie, you see a real clear parallel of Jedi Masters who have exiled themselves for various reasons and who have been a little bit insane, especially Yoda on Tatooine, going back to that relationship. And I think Rian Johnson's clear purpose for the majority of that early arc between Rey, and first time we've mentioned Rey, by the way. That's interesting.
Yeah,
between Luke, is that Luke was exiling himself, and that perhaps he's lost a little touch. Because, talking about the milk scene, before I get into that a little more, the scene, the Phantom Menace ends with, I'm sorry, geez, I'm going to cut that out because somebody get killed for that. Force Awakens ends with Rey standing in front of Luke, holding his lightsaber that we've grown up like talking about honoring something as fans, like this fantastic lightsaber that Obi-Wan gives to Luke that used to be Anakin's lightsaber from when he was a kid. We've seen it in every episode. She hands him the lightsaber, and literally his first thing is chucking it over his shoulder off the cliff. I mean, so you start there with Luke, and you realize it throughout this arc of him kind of showing off his insanity, drinking milk out of this green milk out of this breast of this, I don't know what it was, but I kind of think it fits kind of in hindsight, just kind of showcasing that Luke maybe wasn't quite right. And you had this kind of counterbalance of the old Luke with the new Luke, and you can kind of see him battling back and forth with that until we get to Crate at the end. When we'll get to that ending scene in a few, but I actually kind of liked it. The more, and I had the same thought you did the first time I saw it. I do think that this is a movie that you're going to have to simmer with for a while and maybe see a couple of times and kind of really get what they were going for, because the whole Luke Skywalker arc is very interesting to me as well. I want to get to Rey, especially that scene. You want to know my biggest problem with the casino stuff was that it took away from the amazing opening segments between Luke and Rey. Mm-hmm. Rey playing the old Luke role of trying to get Luke to teach her how to be a Jedi. And I think that their relationship was I really enjoyed it a lot. I think that Rey was trying to smack him out of this stupor he'd been in for years and years. And of course, as fans, we're trying to figure out like what he did with Kylo Ren, with Ben Solo. I loved the relationship that they were building, and it seemed like every time we get to a good place, they'd skip off to Cantu. And I guess that was probably my only issue with that. I did think that we could have had more of that relationship between the two, which I don't know that we'll get. I don't know. We'll see down at the end. But Rey as a character in this movie, again, I want to tread lightly because she was in my favorite scene of the entire movie, but I do, and she's a fantastic. Daisy Ridley is a fantastic actress. Again, Oscar Wilde, Adam Driver, Daisy. All of these characters these actors and actresses are so phenomenal in this, which I think maybe differentiates it from some of the other movies as well. But what'd you think about the overall arc with Rey and Luke? Was it too much Tatooine from Empire, or was it enough different for you that it was okay? And what about Luke Skywalker? I think if I were going to be an old school fan complaining, I don't know. I kind of, as the Luke arc played out, I kind of wanted to see a couple of things that I didn't see. I don't know if I've mentioned this to you or not, but what about this early arc with Rey and Luke? What did you think about that?
Well, the early arc was interesting. I mean, all those things you like you told everybody who's listening. This is the first time you and I have kind of chatted at length about some things, and I hadn't thought about how out of touch those exiled Jedi had become. So that's a great point. It could explain a lot of why Luke was acting the way he was acting. And I mean, but
God, I hope so, because
yeah, Luke has always been. I mean, even in the original, 4, 5, and 6, he was always a little bit whiny, a little bit. I don't know, not out of touch, but just over melodramatic, like over dramatic, I guess is what I'm getting at. And that's kind of the way I felt like Luke was still acting, like the lightsaber chuck over the shoulder, like self-pity. I'm not doing this anymore. The Jedi always fail. I messed up. I failed these people, so I'm going to sit here and pout. That's the Luke like that I was used to. I mean, people have always wanted Luke Skywalker to be more than what he is. Yes, is he the most powerful Jedi in the galaxy? Probably. That's what we're led to believe. It's tough to know with what's canon and what's not canon anymore, so you get a little lost. But that's what we believe. So it's like you get Luke, and it kind of fits. It fits with what I remember Luke being. Now, the very end, in the part where he's obviously self-transported himself, through the Force to a different location, was just about as fun as it gets. I was pretty broken up that he had passed at the end, but it makes sense for what I think they're trying to do with Rey. Like you said, the big thing I talk to people about is maybe the script wasn't perfect. Maybe it had some weird parts to it, but those two, the driving forces here behind it, and even Oscar Isaac to an extent, those two, Kylo Ren, Adam Driver and Daisy Ridley, are just fantastic. And every scene that those two are in together is like powerful stuff. Obviously, I think you were going to get to it, but that scene in the Emperor's chambers was about as jumped up as a scene as I've ever been in a movie theater. And I don't know, man, that was about as cool as it gets. I don't know where they go from there. I hate that we'll talk about this too, like a little bit, and we can talk about it now, but Rey's parents, I was hoping for something more with Rey's parents, for her to be that Force sensitive, to have very little training with the Force, and to be that powerful and that understanding, and to be able to battle, in the Force Awakens, to be able to battle one of the Knights of Ren, that guy, to be able to take him on in a lightsaber battle. Her first real one was just like, I have some qualms with how understanding you can be with the Force, but for her to be that powerful and to just be a daughter of two scavengers who sold her, just kind of, it rubbed me the wrong way. But then again, that plays to the part of, we don't always have to understand everything. Maybe people are just born with a high midichlorian count that we don't necessarily understand. So I don't mind that in a sense, but I guess deep down in my heart, I kind of wanted her to be a Kenobi, so it was kind of bothering me. But maybe we don't know who her parents truly are. So it goes everywhere. The original question was Luke. I liked it. I like what they portrayed with him as he was when we left him. I liked that Rey helped him overcome it. The dynamic of those two it was solidly done. Like you said, the jumping back and forth stuff, when it got to the point that it was like, all right, let's do this. You know, when he's sitting around the fountain there and trying to explain to her what happened and why the Jedi should end, that stuff was pretty powerful. They would jump away from it, and then I'd have to jump back into it mentally, which is, first world problems. But this kind of, it is what it is. I thought that, like I said, the script was a little jumbled in some places, but the powerful scenes were about as powerful Star Wars scenes that I've ever seen. And like I said, that Kylo and Rey fighting the guard scene was about as cool as entertaining and cool a scene as I have ever seen in Star Wars.
Okay, I agree with everything you said. I'm gonna hold off talking about the end scene at Crate for now, because the end of the Luke that you alluded to, the end of maybe the Luke story. Well, clearly the Luke story of him being alive. I mean, obviously he'll probably be in 9 as a Jedi, Ghost Force or whatever you want to call it. But I do, those of you listening, we're jumping around because every time Jake says something, I think of 12 other things to talk about. Coming back to the Luke piece, I think the thing that irritated me the most, and this is one of those things that they kind of flash to, and I got this expectation. They flashed the X-Wing in the water. And of course, the minute I saw that, I'm like, if that thing doesn't get raised out of the water, I'm going to hate this movie. I'm going to hate it. I'm going to hate it with a passion, because I wanted to see Luke flying that X-Wing more than anything itself. And I wanted it to connect to Empire. And sure enough, they show the X-Wing and we never see it again. So again, Rian Johnson's almost like, here it is. Yeah, go away. So
yeah, no, that's what I was. It's like there's some pieces, like you said, that they flash, or there's some things I wanted to know more about what happened at his training academy. Like there's that 20-year window that I just want to really understand. Like, what happened to his green lightsaber? We didn't get the story from Maz about what happened and how she came into possession of the other lightsaber. Yeah. There's so many things I just wanted to know, and maybe we do. I wasn't obviously born when the Empire Strikes Back came out, so I don't know what that feeling was from the first one, or sorry, from 2 to 3. There were, and you can touch on it, but there were more things that you probably didn't know than you do know. So I get it. I'm just like, that's the things I wanted to know the most. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the funny thing about, growing up in the early 80s with all of these movies actually coming out is we didn't have the internet. So Rian Johnson has to worry about everything. Whereas, I mean, when I was sitting in the movie theater watching Empire and found out that, and if this is a spoiler for somebody, well, screw you, you should have watched Empire Strikes Back by now. If the moment where we find out Luke Skywalker is Darth Vader's kid, I mean, you want to talk about mind blowing. And then, of course, in Return of the Jedi, when we find out that Carrie Fisher Princess Leia is Luke's sister. I mean, those were mind blowing events. And Ryan, and we don't really know what J.J. Abrams was planning in this arc of this trilogy for that 9th movie. I mean, obviously, if this is truly the end of the Skywalker saga, I think there's a lot of things that perhaps they didn't want to play out in 8 that they were kind of treading water to get to. And I think if Rian Johnson's job was just to tread water through this movie to get us to 9 without giving away too much, but giving us an incredible story, I think he did an amazing job of that. All right. Let's talk about Kylo Ren and kind of build up to that scene. Again, I think Kylo Ren does this really amazing job. Adam Driver, excuse me. Does this really amazing job of playing Kylo Ren as this tortured soul. And I think that regardless of what we've seen throughout the first 2 movies, we clearly see a guy who's evil at the end of the day, but a guy who still has, like every Skywalker, that kind of that white kind of dragging at him throughout it. And we see it. I mean, obviously he kills his father, he kills Han Solo. And, I don't want to get into that movie yet, but he has a moment where he has an opportunity to kill his mother, to really kind of put an exclamation point right at the beginning of the movie, and he doesn't choose to do that. Again, I think he just sitting in that cockpit, he really played it well, and I love the idea of them bashing the mask so that we get that full Adam Driver effect. You know, and then we go from there and we start building up to this Rey Adam Driver confrontation through this really kind of cool thing they add that Rian Johnson and perhaps Abrams added to the Force, this Force connection that we see throughout the movie, which I haven't really seen a lot online about this. I can imagine it might annoy some people. I thought it was amazing add-on. I don't know what you think about that. What do you think about the Force connection where we had Rey and Rey and Kylo throughout the movie from beginning to end, first through Snoke and then through each other, of them literally wherever they were at being able to talk to each other, not only talk to each other, but almost physically be present. What'd you think of that?
Yeah, wild. Really cool add-on to what the Force can do. I hadn't thought of that. So when it happened, I thought it was really neat. I do wonder, like you said, it seems like Snoke brought them together. Did he actually do that, or did he just see it happening? Because like we talked about, or you had just mentioned, I'm sorry, it kept happening afterwards. So I don't know. And then that puts me on a whole nother tangent. I love it personally. I think it was really neat. Makes me think there's more to those two than we understand. It takes me to Snoke. I want to dig deep on that dude, because that is the biggest movie failure to me so far. If I had one thing I could change or one thing I would gripe about, it's that we had an actual villain that we could care about that was kind of cool, like not Darth Vader cool, but he was mysterious. He was all powerful, obviously suspending Rey in the air and chucking her around and force lightning action, everything we want them to be. And then he's just dead. Like we get no backstory on what this guy really is, where he came from, why his face is messed up. There's so many theories that I read going into this movie about who that dude actually was. I wasted countless YouTube hours on this guy, and then he's split in half with his tongue hanging out, and I was so heartbroken, man, because that's the thing about like the Marvel movies. I'll touch on those again, but there's no real great villain. Now I have hope for Thanos in the next, obviously the Infinity War, but there's no great villain. We need villains, and Snoke was like that dude. I thought he could be the guy, and it fell apart. I think Kylo, like you said, to kind of go back and answer your question, I get off on tangents. I'm really sorry, but
that's the point. That's the point of having. That's the point of not doing a straight review and just having a conversation. Hopefully, someone can listen to this and go, "Yeah, I agree with them," or they're crazy and insane. Which most likely true.
Yeah, probably the latter there, the crazy insane part. But no, crap. What was I talking about? Now I lost it.
Kylo Ren.
Yeah, so like you said, Kylo dances between the dark and the light. So that's his tormented soul is a really fascinating study that they'll probably dig into in episode 9. But his back and forth between the light and the dark is what makes him so interesting. That arc with him and Daisy Ridley is going to be fantastic. But he's not a true evil character, and Snoke was like the true evil character that I really wanted to see developed and have some sort of huge historical tie-in. Guys like a couple buddies of mine at work know way more about this than I do, and they teach me about this stuff all the time. But like, I just wanted him to have some ancient tie-in that he was a part of, but they went a different route. I was torn up about it. That'd be my only part I'd change.
Yeah, I mean I've heard every rumor from it being Mace Windu to the Sith Lord that the Emperor Palpatine was talking about. I've heard it's Darth Vader, it's Anakin Skywalker reincarnated. I've heard and it was so funny to me when it happened. And even when I got home, I had a lot of the same feelings as you did. But as I started kind of piecing this Kylo Ren kind of development on, as we build up to this scene where Rey keeps seeing the light side of the Force in him and decides, like Luke did with Han and Leia, we see Rey leaving the Octu or whatever it was called where Luke was, and she heads off to confront to Kylo Ren to try to turn him to the light. And we see as this amazing scene that is so much an homage to Return of the Jedi, where we see Kylo Ren bringing her to Snoke in the elevator, just like Luke and Darth Vader. We see them walk up, and we see Snoke take her and show her the destruction of the rebels, and we see again a Return to the Jedi when we saw the Emperor showing Luke the destruction of the rebellion. Then we see, and then we see these moments where Snoke is clearly about to kill her, do something with her, try to turn her, and they keep flashing to Kylo Ren and this tortured, like, who do I side with here? And then the brilliance of Kylo Ren to use what Snoke believed to be the feelings that he had to kill Rey is a way to kill him. If you go back to that scene, Snoke is saying to Kylo Ren that I know everything that you're thinking. I see that you want to kill her. I see that you want to turn that lightsaber and stick it into her side. And the whole time he was thinking of him, but using the stuff with Rey to kind of mask what Snoke could see, which ended up splitting Snoke in half. And I remember when it happened, my daughter and my friend and I were sitting there, my son, and we all were looking at each other like, wait a second. He can't really be dead. There's this scene at the tail end of that where they show him, like you said, with the tongue out and all that. But the funny thing is like his hand, one of his hands is like still on the throne. I mean, he was like in 3 pieces. It was so funny. And it was almost like Ryan Johnson's like, okay, internet community, I just want to let you know, yeah, he's really a nobody. The important part here is that Kylo Ren is going to take over for him for the First Order. And the funny thing about it is, that scene from beginning to end takes you in so many different places. And this is why when you talk about Daisy Ridley, you talk about Adam Driver and the types of actors that they are. They took us on a journey where in the span of about 20 minutes, we felt that kind of angst that we felt in Return of the Jedi. Like, would Kylo Ren turn on Snoke? And he does. We get this amazing moment where they're back to back. Rey and Kylo fighting the I forget what those guards are called, but fighting Snoke's guards, these samurai-like guards, and they're battling these guards in this amazing lightsaber duel. And we get to see Daisy for the first time, clearly strong with the Force, and we get to see that brutish Kylo Ren fighting, and you can see them looking back and forth at each other. They care about each other. And then you get to the moment where they've killed everybody, and you have this moment, and I don't know if you've had this, but I, in this moment, was thinking, okay, Kylo just turned good. The main bad guy is dead. What's gonna... And then I literally had this oh shit moment where I was like, oh my gosh, this was all a plot for Kylo to take over not only the First Order, but the Rebellion, to hook up with Daisy or Rey and create this whole new thing. And just as I'm saying that, you can see it in his eyes. And again, he transforms again, and you have this moment of almost complete regret. Like, oh God, here we go. Now we've got Kylo kind of in this powerhouse bad guy role for 9, which I actually love a lot. So I think the give and take with the Snoke thing, because it does piss me off too, the give and take with it is we don't know about his past, and we may find out about it in the last movie. I doubt it, but we may. But the take that we get is now we have Kylo Ren, who everybody now admits can't be redeemed. We have finally a Skywalker in the role of the ultimate bad guy. He can't be redeemed. While he is a tortured soul, we know at the end of the day he always makes the bad choice as the bad guy in this mysterious Rey. And I do want to say one more thing about the Rey thing. It's funny to me that I think everybody that I've talked to, including you just now, and maybe even a little me, assumes that what Ben Solo, what Kylo Ren saw, was reality. And I just want to point out a couple of things. And this isn't really old school Jim talking either. If I remember correctly, when they split up Luke and Leia, what Ben Kenobi did was he sort of erased the thoughts on where they would be. And he put Ben Kenobi and he put Princess Leia's adopted father, I can't remember his name, from Alderaan, the guy played by Jimmy Smits, kind of in charge of the both of them. But they split them off and they sort of erased kind of the thought of where they would be. They kind of force blocked where they would be so that Darth Vader couldn't find them. Is it possible that, so I know you know where I'm going with this, that Rey is, I just can't fathom the Skywalker saga ends with the only Skywalker left being the bad guy. There's no way Rey's not a Skywalker. And I know, you got the Kenobi thing going, but is it possible that the only reason why Kylo Ren thinks that she's just a nobody because Ben or somebody in the past has maybe Luke has kind of blocked the memory of who she is. And Luke was playing off the fact that she was his daughter because he's A, insane, and because B, he knows that the minute someone finds out who she is specifically, that she's the number one target for the First Order to kill. Yeah,
no, absolutely. I think it's tough for me. There's a couple ways this could go. It's tough for me to think in this entire galaxy, there's only one family that can do what the Skywalkers can do. So that's why a part of me wanted her to be a Kenobi or something like come from the Windu family or Qui-Gon Jinn type relation, something that told me another family can be powerful. But like you said, it would make sense that she would be a Skywalker in a sense. I was kind of expecting that the entire time. That's completely plausible that they're blocking, that sort of thing for her safety, all the above. I don't know. I can't yet 100% believe that she was just a child of scavengers. I think obviously it could be true. They want you to think it's true, but I think that's the big plot twist in the next movie is who her parents actually are. I'll tell you one thing, talking about that scene, that powerful scene there at the end, you're talking about when you see a complete change in the complexion of the eyes of Adam Driver as he's going back to being power hungry. A weird part of me wanted Daisy Ridley to join him, and it was the weirdest conflict of emotion I've ever had. Like, yeah, I kind of want these two to pair up and like be badasses and run the galaxy, and then we got to figure out how Poe Dameron can fight against them and try to change Daisy Ridley back to what she normally is, and like Finn, they're trying to chase her down and figure out, you know what I mean? Like that was a weird part of me that wanted that to be true. But again, I mean,
one of the themes, Jake, one of the themes of this, one of the big themes, again, with more of that humor, when Yoda does pop up and talks about the Jedi books, and we find out that Luke never even read them. I think one of the interesting pieces to all this, and I think we, when we saw the Jedi Order, the Jedi Council get kind of decimated by Anakin, I think one of the big kind of themes actually through 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, even though we didn't know it in 4, 5, 6, is whether or not the Jedi are even good. And that's an interesting point because I think it would have been an interesting arc to have the Skywalkers or Ben Solo with Rey as kind of the Jedi, Sith, or whatever. And then you have kind of the rebellion who believe in the Force, using the Force maybe in a different way, fighting them as kind of more of a human element. I think that would have been an interesting way to go. And it would have been fun to watch kind of the havoc that Rey and Ben Solo, Kylo Ren could have provoked. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but I never really thought of that. That's a good point.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting. I thought that would have been like the kind of biggest plot twist they could have thrown at us. But again, I like how they tied it together at the end. It could go a million different directions in the next one. It feels like it's going to be a salvage Kylo Ren type of movie next. What they can do for his character, how he can come out of it, redeem himself. I don't know. I don't know where they go with Princess Leia because I thought she was going to perfectly kind of tie up her character when she's floating in space.
I mean, they could have killed her. They could have killed her like 6 different times, including when she died or didn't die and used the Force for the first time, right? Like why? So we get this cool like Vice Admiral Holda played by Laura Dern from Jurassic Park, and why? Like, okay, like I don't know, maybe have Leia like do the light speed thing. By the way, one of the greatest scenes of the movie was when she goes light speed off into the Avenger, or whatever that thing was called.
Really cool special effects there too.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, the visuals of Rian Johnson in this movie, spectacular. Okay, really quick, the Leia arc. Why don't you lead this one? You mentioned her using the Force and kind of where they're going with her. Let's just kind of run through the Leia arc here. She's alive still. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, no, I thought that obviously the tragic passing of Carrie Fisher, you just expected them to kind of neatly wrap up the character, and she's out floating in space, and it's like this is the kind of it's the death that the rebellion maybe needs to keep fighting and understand that they're strong, they can build strength, and this is who we rally behind. And all of a sudden, she floats back into the ship, and it was really weird. And I'm thinking to myself, this is this is suspending my belief of what I thought was possible in a made-up world. So I was like, I was so frustrated. And then I was like, I was at peak frustration in the movie when Luke was getting blasted by like 75,000 lights, blasters, and I was thinking he was actually there, and then he walked out of it, and I'm like, okay, what's going on? Can you not die anymore? Like I was actually frustrated. My wife sitting next to me going, shut up. I was actually frustrated. But no, that the Leia arc is interesting. We never truly find out if she has anything more she can do other than feel things. Just, like unbalances in the Force, and when tragic things happen. I never thought Carrie Fisher got enough screen time in her younger years and in her currently still working now. I don't know how they're going to do that, but in this movie too, I thought she could have gotten a little bit more time. But no, the only scene that bothered me of hers, I thought she was her calm, collected self. She did it really well with the scenes that she was in and managing Poe's fiery, let's go blaze them down type of atmosphere. She did great with that. It's just the scene where I thought they could have perfectly put a bow on an awesome character, kind of as, like I said, that rallying force that the rebellion would need. And they brought her back in, and I was just really confused by it because I thought it was going to be perfect. So I don't know. Take it from where you will for that. That's just my opinion on it.
Well, and she's on the Millennium Falcon now, so God bless them. Kathleen Kennedy. Oh gosh, I'm getting this wrong. Who runs the Star Wars stuff now?
I can't remember. Actually,
I can't remember her name, but anyways, she said that Carrie Fisher wasn't going to be in 9, which to me poses a tremendous problem because are you seriously going to kill off Leia in the scroll at the beginning of 9? Like, to me, that's a major mistake. But then again, I don't know that you can CGI one of the, the 3, hallowed characters of Star Wars. So she also said they weren't going to do that. So we shall see.
I don't know how they do that. The CGI thing opens a lot of doors, which we saw in Rogue One, and we saw it twice in Rogue One to kind of open the door that they can keep somebody running for short little spurts there. So I don't know, man. I would hate to see them enter a character the way you said. We don't actually figure out what happens to her, and that would suck.
So I want to talk about this last scene, this crate scene, and it's funny. A friend of mine who had not a Star Wars fan at all in the least, went and saw it and said, why did they have this scene in it? It could have been over long before this. And I even kind of thought, I'm not used to a 2.5 hour Star Wars flick. I actually enjoyed the fact that it was 2.5 hours, and I've seen it multiple times. So let's talk about this last scene. Obviously, look, this salt flat planet that has incredible tie-ins to, of course, Hoth from Empire Strikes Back. I mean, they didn't have AT-ATs. They had these new things with the saber teeth in the front that I don't know what those things were. But again, obviously a scene that kind of, again, made me think a little bit of Rogue One and a lot of Hoth, where we have Luke come back. The first thing I want to talk about here, and I know we've been going for a long time, so those of you that have made it this far, thank you. But I do want to say that the first thing I want to mention about this, the thing I love about this movie is the unexpectedness of it. We're literally sitting in this old rebel base with, I don't know how many people were in that base, 10, 12. This is the end of the rebellion. These are the last 12, 15 people in the rebellion. And for the first time in all of these movies, I actually thought to myself that if we have a wrong move here, the rebellion's literally gone. Like, all of the major players are there. The only person who can save them is Luke, who eventually shows up. Did you like that? I loved that piece to this, where as the reverse pyramid started going, and that's where this post storyline comes in, where he does blow up the big First Order ship. However, they lose all of their bombers and all of the people that they lost. This is the first movie maybe ever in the Star Wars canon where I take it back, because Rogue One definitely plays with this, but where body count becomes important, where every person that dies gets us that much closer to the rebellion being over, until we get to the end when we realize that the rebellion's probably never going to be over because of everything that we talk about, specifically with Leia talking about how nobody came to see, but then the tie-in from Cantu with the ring, and we see the Force and that little boy kind of hearkening back to Anakin. Did you like the fact that they literally were down to their last breath?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it has to feel like they're at their most desperate time. I mean, I think in the second movie, it 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 perfectly got them to the point where it feels like their backs against the wall, like General Hux was saying. They got him on a rope. I kind of all along wanted them to be following Finn, tracking Finn is the way to that they were tracking them, but that's neither here nor there. At the end, just the way it felt right that even if it would have been crushed, like not everybody dying, but just it felt like when they're at the very end of their wit that Luke coming to save them. I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to encompass is that it all felt right from the standard of they're at their very worst time, and Luke's kind of sacrificed whatever Luke did. Obviously, it was so much of something that it cost him his life, and he saved them. And they're like you said, their most desperate time in an old rebel base. It felt right. I think that scene was paramount. It tied the very end together. Them escaping, Rey coming to kind of save the day at the very end, getting them out, and you could see that Rey's starting to understand her powers and how to shift things around.
Yeah.
And it was a perfect. If they would have ended it after the sacrificial scene where she flies into lights, it would have felt empty to me. I needed to know a little bit more. I got a little bit more from Adam Driver of his just overall obsession with Luke Skywalker and trying to kill him.
Jeez. Yeah. That was amazing. That was absolutely amazing. General Hux, we haven't even talked about the humor side of him. Maybe that's for another podcast, but we talked, the General Hux character kind of being the humorous side of the First Order. That scene when they're standing in that ship and Adam Driver's as everybody, as you mentioned, like try to destroy Skywalker, and Hux looks over at him and goes, "Do you think?" I forget what he said.
He's like, "Do you think that's enough?"
Yeah. So they stop firing, and the smoke clears, and there's Skywalker still standing there. And I remember thinking, we didn't see necessarily the Kylo Ren of the first movie where he was throwing fits in almost every other scene.
Yeah,
we see this development, but we do see the fit there with that. He goes down, and we see this. I mean, it was epic. This moment where we see Kylo Ren, the student in front of the master Luke, who did try to kill him, even though he stopped. And we see this epic moment where there's this confrontation, and we see Kylo Ren slicing Luke Skywalker in half, reminiscent of Obi-Wan Kenobi and Pope. And of course, he turns around and Skywalker's still there, and then he sticks the lightsaber into Luke, and see around, kid. That fantastic line from Mark Hamill to Kylo Ren, and we see him disappear, and we realize that he's been on Ahch-To the whole entire time. This transference of this Jedi Force. Pretty amazing stuff, including the fact that we got to see Luke and Leia talk to each other for the very first time, where Luke was able to place in Leia's hands Han Solo's dice that he used to have hanging from the Falcon. And it was so tangible that she actually had it in her hand and thought it was real. And again, this leads me back to Luke being able to block out who Rey is. And then it disappears once we realize that Luke passes on. That scene to me was epic, except for this. How in the hell do you have Luke Skywalker in a movie and he doesn't get a real saber battle? Are you kidding me? We got to see a couple of little movements, and we know what they can do with CGI because obviously Mark Hamill can't do this. Oh my gosh, I didn't get to see him in the TIE or the X-wing. I didn't get to see him have a real saber battle. Come on, man. I mean, I'm about to go on an epic Carlos Santana rant here. This is the thing. This is the one thing that really kind of, and this is again. Talk about first world problems. The one thing that pisses me off is I wanted more for Luke, but I'm old. That's me.
No. You're right. But I think that if we're thinking about, and you're right. I mean, I would have loved more from Luke. I wanted him to be in a lightsaber battle. I wanted him to be doing jumps and different things that's my dude that I've always thought about for the last 25 years. But at the same time, I think Rian Johnson, my thought process on it, because I was talking, I go with a couple friends. We always go to these premieres and we're walking away talking, is that they wanted to shift the focus off of Luke and shift it to the future. And they didn't want to give it too much of Luke, you know what I mean? And you probably thought of this, but they were just trying to move it forward kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, just an awesome scene with the see around kid. They nailed that part of it.
They gave Luke the Han Solo line. I mean, that's a Han Solo line. Sorry, man. Yeah. I mean, that's all hand right there. That is the see around kid. As a matter of fact, he did say that to Luke. I'm positive.
Yeah, didn't he
Oh,
say it at the end of A New Hope when he's supposed to be leaving
yeah.
and he ends up coming to save him or something like
Yeah,
that?
yeah,
I
yeah,
could be
yeah.
wrong.
No, I actually that's an interesting tie-in because of course that's his kid. So very nice. Yes, yes, yes. But you're right. I mean, they do shift because he gets his moment. And just imagine this, like Luke Skywalker's whole point in all of these movies is to get to this point, to be that little bit of a diversion to get Rey, Leia, and the rest of Poe and the rest out of course, the base that they were kind of locked into. All right, that leads me to this. As we kind of wrap things up here, and I kind of think, Jake, maybe a month or two from now, we come back to this movie, let you get to see it another time, and we jot some notes down and get an official outline and maybe do an official review. So we'll come back to this because there's lots that we haven't talked about here as well. And, you know, the rumors are going to start to fly out soon anyway, so we'll probably have those to talk about too. But overall, at the end of this, you know, I guess if we were to give it out of 10 or out of 5, let's go out of 10. Let's go IMDb here. You're not even a week out on this movie. What are your thoughts out of 10? Like, how would you score this? The official, unofficial WFNY Jake and Jim review. Like, what would you score this out of 10?
I'm going. I said it when I left. Again, per review of a couple more times. Like you said, we'll get back together. I thought it was about an 8.5.
Nice. We're on together, baby. 8.5. I've got my daughter over here to prove it. Yeah, I said 8.5. Yes.
Yeah, it was great. There were some things that they missed on that could have made it like perhaps the top Star Wars ever that I thought they missed. Like I said, they just missed a couple little things, but that's nitpicky. The visuals were.
Don't be messing with Empire Strikes Back, dude.
I know.
We're gonna have word. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
No, the visuals were fantastic. The humor was a little bit much, but at the right times it was good. The acting was good, and I think that's underestimated in some of these. And aside from a couple little script problems I had, I thought the script was really good too. So an 8.5 feels really fair. It was certainly better, more entertaining for me than The Force Awakens. I thought it was more entertaining for me than 4, 5, other than 5, it was better than 4 and 6. Probably actually not A New Hope. I don't think it tops A New Hope, but it was better than the prequels, other than the second half Revenge of the Sith, because everybody just needed to see how Darth Vader became Darth Vader. So it's up there. It's up there in the top 4, which is pretty dang good considering how many they've made. I have a soft spot, and we need to talk about this. I think Rogue One is just so vastly underrated. It might be one of the best 2 ever made. I thought Rogue One was utterly fantastic filmmaking, pinnacle filmmaking, actually. But because I'm off on another tangent. It went so deeply, and it cured every deep dive that Star Wars committed fans needed, and it answered every question we needed, and it was just great. I thought they could have done this with this one. They left some holes, but that's okay. An 8.5 is a dang good movie. 2.5 hours is not too long. You can never get enough Star Wars because the second you walk out of the theater, you just want more Star Wars. So, length of the movie. The hardest part is knowing now I have to wait 2 more years to figure out the next part of this whole thing. So, no, 8.5. They did a really good film. Could have been a little bit better, but I have no real issue with it.
Well, we're gonna have to do a Rogue One podcast here because I think I've had this conversation with all of my friends that of all varying ages when the Star Wars pantheon. I think if you took the name Star Wars off of Rogue One and you just went and saw Rogue One and it was a science fiction movie with this fantastic plot where this rebellion was trying to get something from this evil like something. I think if you go and see that movie, I think that movie as a standalone does very well. I mean, it's not obviously going to do, 500 million, 800 million, 1 billion, whatever it did. But it's going to do, if you spend 150 million to make the movie, it's going to get you, a good 150 million in profit. That was a good, really good movie. And as far as just an arc goes for any singular movie in the Star Wars pantheon, to me, Empire Strikes Back as an arc is the best movie bar none. But I do think you make a really good case for Rogue One, and I do agree with you. Now, to me, Star Wars is more than that. To me, Star Wars is kind of the feelings that you bring with it, and so for me, where I rate it and how I feel about it as a movie are 2 different things. And I think
sure,
maybe our next podcast, movie podcast, whenever that is, let's do our rankings, because I forced you to. Did you do your rankings? Do you have them?
I have not done rankings
All right.
yet. I wanted to. I sat down, I thought about it, and then I thought I have to see this at least one more time to give it fair justice.
So I've got my rankings. I'm not going to give them. The next podcast we do is strictly a number ranking, and we'll go only the movies now. I don't want to throw in any of the series that are on Cartoon Network or whatever they're on.
Yeah,
none of that. I do watch them with my son, but I just the movies. And I'm actually very curious. I think we'll find out a lot about each other with explanations, and I suspect I'm going to end up pissing you off with a couple of things. But I digress.
No,
I mean, for me, a lot of people are looking at these films again, I think, with the wrong visage and the wrong eyes. I think a lot of people go and they look for this is a problem I have with Marvel movies too, is people go and they're looking for the Academy Award. And I'm thinking to myself, you know what? I want to go. And if it's 2.5 hours, if it's 3 hours, if it's 2 hours, if it's an hour and 20 minutes, I want to go and I want to forget all of my problems. And if you want to throw this, animal cruelty stuff or the rich always power everything stuff into a movie, I think that's fantastic, as long as I don't connect it to my real life. I don't want to go see Star Wars and be taught something. However, and the same goes for Marvel. And I hear these people talk about these arcs through a Marvel movie, and I think to myself, it's Spider-Man. Like, I want to see him swing. I want to see him beat people up. I want to see him be funny. I want to see him fight this battle. And it's the same for me with Star Wars. The one problem that I have with this movie at the end of it all, I can get by with anything, for me, is this. And I know I'm going off again. So if this is an hour and 30 minutes, just deal with it. Such is life. I grew up, so Jake, I grew up, I'm not going to tell you how old I am. I'm old. Let's just leave it at that. I grew up with these characters, Luke, Leia, Solo. These were characters that in my life were big. I mean, I'm not, I didn't think I was going to marry Leia at some point, but as far as movie goes, these characters were a big deal to me, and somehow we have these characters keep coming back into our lives. And at the end of Return of the Jedi, everybody's happy. They're dancing around Endor, life is good, everything ends great. And then we find out that Luke's insane. Leia and Han are separate. They've been separated for God knows how long. He's chosen to live with Chewbacca, flying around, and leaves his son, and his son's evil. And Jake, man, my 3 characters, their lives were miserable. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, no, that's right. That's right, man. We talked about a little bit of the things that I wanted to know in that 18-year span, or however long that span was. I'm off on the years, but no, those are something I would have loved to have known before, or even in The Force Awakens, how we got here. Those questions of how we got here, like you're saying, from the heroes that we were left with, and the dancing, and then and the celebrations, to how did the First Order come into business? What did they come from? Where did they come from? I get that the ashes of the Empire's outskirts came together, but there's a lot of stuff that they make you just kind of figure out, and I wish we could have known.
They put it in books, and I'm not going to say anything bad about books because I don't want to sound like that guy, but I want to see it in the movie. I got 9 movies. That's what I want to see it in. I don't want to have to go and read 12 novels to find out who all of these people are. Just give it to me.
For sure.
I was reading somewhere that apparently Poe Dameron's parents fought at Endor, or his dad did, or something. Where was this? And apparently it was in a comic book series. And I'm thinking, oh, no. You really need to give me something. And who knows? Maybe in the next 10 or 15 years, we'll get a series. Maybe we'll get a series on FX now that Disney owns that. In which case, we'll get some of this middle ground. Who knows? But all right, yeah. I'm going to end it there. I'm not sure this is where I wanted to end it, but I sort of think, Jake, we could probably go for another hour. We got to stop at some point, or people aren't going to listen to it. This might be part 1 and part 2. We'll part 3 this, or part 2 this sometime down the line. Once Jake and I have gotten to see this movie one more time, we'll kind of rehash our thoughts after a month or two, and then our next podcast we will do our top 9 Star Wars movies. Man, you hit me with Rogue One being perhaps in your top 2. You're not the first person that said that to me. The last person that said that to me is my age. So
nice. Okay. I love these debates, man. the beautiful part of these conversations is what a film does for you versus what it does for somebody else, and that's the beautiful part of Star Wars. Is
Yeah.
we don't always have to agree. We just have to see where the other person's come from, and I don't know, man. That's a beautiful part of debate for me in general. But yeah, no, that's good. I really look forward to it, man.
Yeah, well, and the amazing part about this is if I brought my 13-year-old into this conversation, she's probably thinking right now, do not do that, Dad. But if I brought my 13-year-old into this conversation, we could have a pretty legitimate debate from 3 different perspectives, which is what makes Star Wars, to me, unprecedented in American movie history, because we've never had characters who have continued to develop from 1977 all the way through 2017. We're talking 40 years. These characters are not only viable, but on the same string and growing and adding. And it's not like, I mean, maybe Star Trek to some extent, and I'm I don't want to go down that path, but these 2 like science fiction movies are really the only kind of cinema that we've seen this happen to. So with that being said, if you made it all the way through this, thank you so much. And we're going to be doing more of this. I promise you, Jake and I will work on the time. I don't know what this time's coming in at. I'm not even going to look. I'm guessing over an hour, but we're going to work on the time on these. And our goal is every time we've got a big science fiction movie like Star Wars. I better cut that out because someone's going to kill me for that. Every time we get a movie like the Star Wars movies or the Marvel movies, because we got a slew of them coming out. I don't know what you feel about the DC movies, but sometimes those are fun to rip on.
Yeah, I'm all in on all those.
Yeah, so you're going to hear a lot more from Jake and I, and we're going to do some retro ones too, as I've kind of been listening to Jake talk. I'm always curious, we're from different generations. It makes me sound like I'm 100 years old and Jake's like 5. That being said, we probably think more alike on most things than not. So it'll be fun to kind of look back on all these Star Wars movies as we go. And, if you're interested in them, shoot us a tweet. Make sure you leave us a comment and check out all of our stuff. Most of our stuff is sports related. I promise you the very next podcast that Jake and I do will be about football and about Cleveland sports, not about Star Wars, although perhaps we're going to be talking about. Well, I mean, if we could figure out a way for the Browns to use the Force, that would be fantastic. Of course, you know what we're going to get. We're going to try to use the Force, and we're going to get Jar Jar Binks. All right, yeah. I'm ending it there.
The Browns are the Ewoks of the Browns.
No.
All right, good stuff, man. Thanks for having me. Awesome.
Have a good night, everybody.